What impact would it have on your life and your possibilities in life if you could significantly, even dramatically increase the amount of time you spend in an actual leadership position with yourself, with your own life? What might be the impact for your life, for your personal relationships, for your professional relationships? What might be the impact for your family, for your organization, your company, teams that you're part of? If you could actually spend significantly more time in a leadership position with yourself, in a creative, responsive mode with the world around you, instead of in the fairly mechanical and habitual reactive mode that, if we're honest with ourselves, we spend most of our time in. What would that mean for you? If that's an interesting question for you, I would ask you to give me your undivided attention for the next 30 minutes. I'm going to go through 7 keys or steps for what I'm calling mindful leadership. And I mean leadership in the sense of being in a leadership position with ourselves and our own life, as well as stepping into appropriate leadership roles with others, within our communities, our family, with our children, with our organizations. And the same keys apply, whether it's with ourselves or with others. So again, if that's interesting to you, I would ask you to give me your undivided attention for the next 30 minutes, to turn off your cell phone, maybe close the door of the room you're in, and really set yourself up to focus here. And I'm going to make you a promise here that if you do that, your life is going to change in some very positive ways. Now, that may be a bold promise, but I've been delivering this material for, well, really about 25 years. And in this, more or less this form for the last 15 years. And I've literally, first of all, dramatically changed my life. And I've seen it dramatically change the lives of thousands of other people. So that's the promise. It's a bold promise, but it's a promise I'm making. I want to ask you to post questions right below the video window here throughout my presentation, because we'll do about 30 minutes of this presentation. Then we'll move into question and answers for about 20 minutes and open dialogue with you all. And our host is going to be collating the questions that you're posting, and then give me questions to respond to at the end. So please do be posting your questions throughout the presentation here. So I'm going to go through 7 keys, 7 steps for mindful leadership. And we're going to be able to go into them in some depth here. We only have 30 minutes, but we're going to be able to go into them, each of them in some depth here. And then after the Q&A, I'm also going to talk about a great opportunity to do an online course with me called Radical Responsibility, which is a seminar that goes deeply into this work that I've been leading all over the world for the last 15 years, and which is now available as an online course. And we're offering it in partnership with Shambhala Mountain Center, along with a whole package of wonderful offerings from Shambhala Mountain Center and from my organization, Wintour Seminar. So we'll talk about that at the end. So I want to just list what these 7 steps are to begin with, to give you a sense of the territory we're going to cover. So the first is mindful presence. Mindful presence. That's obviously pretty foundational. The second is cultivating greater emotional intelligence. The third is developing greater resilience, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual resilience, which leads to greater availability to ourselves and for others, with others. The fourth is cultivating integrity and ethical values that actually drive our choices in life. Really living a principled, value-centered life. The fifth is radical responsibility, which is really at the core of all the work I do, and we'll talk more about what I mean by radical responsibility. The sixth is cultivating greater capacity for creativity and innovation, which really comes out of the radical responsibility model. It's an empowerment model, empowering ourselves, empowering others to really be in that place of optimal creativity and innovation. And then finally, 7 is living in the place of radical possibility, which is an actual state that we can experience and live our lives from. So these are the 7 steps to mindful leadership with ourselves and with others. And again, if that's of interest to you, stick around for the next half hour or so and shut up all the distractions, and we'll go into it. So we're going to start with mindful presence. And to begin with, I'd like to actually do some mindfulness practice together. So if you would take a good posture in whatever kind of seating arrangement you have. And just connect with your body. Feel the contact between your body and the chair or the cushion, between your feet and the ground, or your legs and the cushion. And just start focusing in on the actual tactile sensations that you can feel there with that contact. And if your mind is wandering here and there, just keep coming back to those actual tactile physical sensations. And let that gentle effort gradually ground you in the body and in the present moment. Breath after breath, expanding your awareness and your attention throughout the body, all of the sensations on the surface of the body from head to toe, contact between our skin and our clothing, and our skin and the air, the passage of air at the nostrils or the lips if we have our lips slightly parted, and all the internal sensations throughout the body. Maybe we can detect our pulse, our blood circulation, our heartbeat, overall sense of nervous energy or the flow of life force or nervous energy in the body. Any aches or pains that are present that we're aware of, sensations of relaxation or tension, just the overall weight and mass of our muscles and bones. There's a term called interoception, which is becoming very important in trauma work. And this is our internal felt experience of the body, which is different than proprioception, which is our sense of the body's boundaries moving through space. You may have heard that people experience, even if they've lost a limb, they have this sense of that limb that's missing. That's proprioception. Here we're talking about the internal felt presence, interoception. So just keep coming back to the body and to the breath, the actual physical tactile sensations that arise with each in-breath, with each out-breath. The rising and falling of the belly, the expansion and contraction of the rib cage back and front. There's this whole field of physical sensate experience that we generally take for granted, but it's the actual experience of being alive in a human body, which is a miracle that is occurring breath after breath. That's amazing and completely new and fresh and unique in every moment. So what we're doing here is what the Vidyadhara Trungpa Rinpoche called taking our seat properly. Taking our seat properly. Sitting with good posture, what he called good head and shoulders, a naturally dignified posture. He also talked about sitting like a king or queen on their throne with a natural sense of dignity, not any kind of false pride or haughtiness, but the natural dignity of someone who's really been trained to hold that seat, to take that seat. Very uplifted, dignified quality. The Vidyadhara also spoke about sitting with a strong back and a soft front. Strong back is that good posture, and it's also the quality of equanimity, that we're able to be with whatever arises moment to moment, even the challenging things. And then soft front is our availability to our experience and to others, our tender heart, our willingness to actually feel our experience. Something that Sakyam Mipam Rinpoche, the head of Shambhala, is really emphasizing in the way he teaches meditation now, directly feeling our experience. So this is taking our seat. Another aspect of that is relaxing our need to know. One of the stimuli to our discursive thinking is this constant need to know, this need for reference points, constantly searching out what's going on, who am I, who are you, what's going on, what's the deal here? Is this going to work out for me? Isn't it going to work out for me? Just we're constantly scanning with this kind of fear-based need to know. So see if we can relax that and relax into a simple appreciation for the present moment, for our body, for our breath, the other sense perceptions, sight, sound, smell, taste. Willing to directly feel all of this. We may notice that we're observing these sensations, physical sensations, or our other sense perceptions, what's arising, sounds, smell, so forth. That's great, the ability to observe. However, we can go further by relaxing into direct feeling, direct experiencing without the need for a subject, a feeler, or a witness of any kind, but really dropping into the flow of sensate experience itself and just resting our mind there, resting our attention there. Just letting the breath have its own rhythm. Suzuki Roshi spoke about letting the breath just be in it, and it's like a swinging door, just swinging back and forth. So we're taking our seat properly, and we're relaxing into not knowing, the first of the 3 tenets in the Zen Peacemaker work. Relaxing that need to know, that need for reference points. Just resting in this flow of sensate experience, which includes all 5 senses. It includes our thinking mind, thoughts are coming and going. And it includes any kind of emotional experience. We're always experiencing subtle layers, if you will, of feeling tone, emotional tone, subtle sadness, gladness, peace, contentment, frustration, anger. We're often not aware of this until it becomes very pronounced, but it's always there. So relaxing into this quality of presence, taking our seat properly with a dignified, uplifted posture. That's the effort we make. And other than that, we're taking our hands off the wheel here and letting go of any need to manipulate our experience in any way. We're not trying to seek some way of being comfortable, but just letting whatever needs to or wants to or seems to arise moment to moment arise as it will and fall away as it will. And just sort of welcoming and greeting what arises moment to moment with an inclusive, non-judgmental, appreciative quality, interest, curiosity. Within that space, we hold our seat. No matter what arises, we don't run away. And we cultivate this quality of equanimity where we're willing to experience both pleasurable and painful sensations, comfort and discomfort, pleasing emotions or pleasant emotions, and challenging or even frightening emotions. All kinds of thoughts, without bias. Whatever arises, we hold our seat. In Trungpa Rinpoche's teaching, this is the second quality here, the path quality of holding our seat with whatever arises. And in the Peacemaker model, we call this bearing witness, just bearing witness to what is. The joy and suffering of life, the whole thing, the whole enchilada. To the extent that we're able and willing to do this, to really sit in the fire of our own experience, not seeking some comfort zone or using meditation or mindfulness as some escape, but really using it as means to actually sit in the fire of our moment-to-moment experience, even when it gets really challenging and really hot. And also in the midst of our life, bringing this quality of wakefulness and mindfulness in the midst of our life and being in the hot fire of the challenges we face in life. That sitting in that hot fire gradually burns away much of the dross, so to speak, and the obstacles, so that there's a natural radiance that begins to happen. And this is the result quality, the radiance, the presence, quality of authentic presence that radiates out. And that's the real gift that we have to bring to others in life. A quality of presence in which others can more easily find their own seat, do their work, do their healing work. And in the peacemaker model, we call this compassionate action or loving action. So thank you. I spent quite a bit of time on this first one, but I wanted to really set the context and the ground here. So obviously presence with ourselves is critical to be in a leadership position with ourselves. Otherwise, we will be continually ambushed by our conditioning. You know, if we're honest with ourselves, even though I assume most of you are mindfulness practitioners at one level of experience or another, some of you may be long-term Dharma practitioners. And nonetheless, if we're honest with ourselves, we'll, I think, recognize that we spend the majority of our time, rather than in a responsive, wakeful place with our life, really in a more reactive place, and that reactivity is mostly habitual and very mechanical. And we're coping with the circumstances of our life rather than responding. And so the initial stage of getting into that leadership position with our own life requires this quality of presence, mindful presence. The second area of cultivating emotional intelligence continues on. With this presence, we can develop greater self-awareness and have more awareness around, what makes us tick? What are my emotional triggers? What are the habitual patterns where my awareness is stolen away into mechanicalness, into falling asleep? What are the often unconscious core beliefs I have about myself and life that don't really serve me so well? Ideas like, I'm no good, I'm not worthy, I'm not smart enough, I'm not tall enough, handsome enough, pretty enough, rich enough. The world's a scary place, you can't trust people. We all have been internalized through our upbringing and life and just being in the culture many of these negative core beliefs, and they drive our attitudes and feelings and responses to life. So becoming aware of those and more aware of those gives us the capacity to manage them, in a sense, to not let them drive our life, and to over time transform them and replace them with positive core beliefs, positive ideas like our own innate basic goodness, our own innate worthiness, that we actually experience that through deeper qualities of presence. We connect with our own innate, unconditional basic goodness and worthiness, and gradually that begins to shift that internal landscape from one that's filled with a lot of negative core beliefs to one that's where the default mode is more quality of trust in ourselves and confidence in our own innate goodness, worthiness, intelligence, and wisdom, and so forth. Then the next quadrant of emotional intelligence is self-regulation, self-management. So greater self-awareness naturally gives us the capacity to self-manage, but we can practice skills of how to state shift, recognizing when we're emotionally triggered and how to get ourselves untriggered, right? Simply counting to 10, taking 10 deep breaths, shifting to belly breathing if we're breathing with our chest, doing various kinds of yogic breathing or simple breathing techniques like the straw breath, where we breathe out like through a straw, in through our nose, and we make the out breath a few counts longer than the in breath. If you do that while breathing with the belly, you'll notice your physiology shift. You're activating the parasympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system, and you're beginning to balance out your physiology and relax a stress response or a fight or flight response, an emotional trigger. Lots of other methods of state shifting, which we go into and practice in great depth in the Radical Responsibility seminar and work. Then social awareness, becoming more aware of the world around us, and being able to more accurately assess what's going on with others. Part of self-awareness is being able to accurately assess our own emotional states and understand the underlying needs, and realizing that our emotions are actually not glued to situations outside of ourselves. They're actually in relation to our perception of our needs being met or not. Our need for love, respect, autonomy, connection, and so forth. So we develop this self-awareness, and turning that outwards, we become more empathically aware of those in the world around us, and we actually care about what we're tuning into. We're more empathically aware of, and we care about the feelings and needs of others. And because of that, we're naturally more skillful in the relational field. So we're getting better data. We're getting clearer data, free of our projections. Right? We learn to withdraw our projections and actually experience the world around us more directly with empathic awareness. We learn deep listening skills, empathic listening skills. And because we're getting better data in the world around us, because we're tuning into people empathically and really understanding more what's really going on for them, we naturally become much more skillful in the relational field. And then we can, in the fourth quadrant of emotional awareness, we can practice actual relationship management, it's called in Goldman's model, or sometimes just we talk about effective relationship skills. We can learn all kinds of communication skills and work with things like Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication, things like motivational interviewing, a great skill set. Lots of communication skills, mediation skills, conflict resolution skills. There's all kinds of skills we can practice to become more effective in communication and in the relational sphere. But it's grounded in greater social awareness, which is grounded in greater social awareness and the ability to self-regulate. Because when we're triggered, right, and we've all heard that expression, the amygdala hijack, right, where the alarm bells have gone off on our limbic brain and the reptilian brain is taking over, going into fight or flight. The executive function in our neocortex is disengaging, and we're in instinctual mode. We're just reacting. And so at that point, we have very little emotional intelligence and very little social awareness, obviously. So all of these work together. And in basically this mindful leadership program and the radical responsibility work, I call it mindfulness-based emotional intelligence training. So it's really all about this. The third key is developing greater resilience and availability. So if we're going to consistently be in a leadership position with ourselves, and what do I mean by that really? So obviously we can't control life. We know that there's some relationship between what we put out and what comes back, but it's not a direct one-to-one relationship. We all know stuff happens, but we know there is some connection, right? And obviously the more awake we are, the more we're going to be able to be in a co-creative relationship with ourselves and with our life. So we can't control life, but we can be in a more co-creative relationship with it and with ourselves. It's very challenging even to have a whole lot of influence over ourselves sometimes. We have to be awake because we have this programmed mechanical nature that was programmed early in our life before we had anything to say about it. The programming is continuing. The media world today is constantly bombarding us with programming. And some people are talking about today it's either learn to program or be programmed. People are even suggesting in the programming world that we should all learn to be coders, right? But if you're not going to go that far, at least we have to realize if we're not proactively managing what we're taking in and managing our own mind and physiology, then we are being programmed constantly. In our prison work, I often use a colloquial expression that either we learn to ride the donkey or the donkey rides us. And of course, for people who find themselves in prison, the analogy is, that donkey rode you right into this prison. And so that donkey is our conditioned mind, all of that programming. And basically we all got a download from our family lineage, our parents, the culture around us, the authority figures in our early life. And then we also did the best to create adaptations to survive in that world when we were very little, 6 months old, 1 month old, 2 months, 3 months, 2 years, 3 years. And those adaptations got imprinted in our psychology and our neurobiology. And so all that stuff is in there. It's our programming, and it's been elaborated over time. And it's very much there. And when we're not awake, guess what's running the show? It's there 24/7, doesn't need batteries. And if we're not awake, the donkey's in charge, right? Okay, so in order to consistently learn to ride the donkey, in order to consistently be in that leadership position with ourselves, we need energy. We need resilience. And we can talk about that at the level of body, mind, heart, and spirit. So ways of cultivating greater physical resilience, right? Healthy diet, exercise, getting enough rest, doing healing work that we need to do. Having a very body-centered somatic approach to our meditation practice. All kinds of things we can do so that we have greater physical resilience, right? I'm working with an Ayurvedic practitioner to really try to get my body fine-tuned, because at my age, if I don't really work for my body to really function optimally, I pay for it. So I want my whole digestive process and everything, and glands and endocrine system and everything to be fine-tuned and operating at its best. It takes a very proactive effort, along with exercise and healthy diet and getting plenty of rest. At the level of mental resilience, we need to use our brain to keep it healthy, use our mind to keep it healthy. So many of you may have seen online things like Lumosity, or maybe crossword puzzles, or what is it called? Sudoku? I don't do it, but it's that other game, kind of like crossword games. But we all know, we've all heard that, learn a new language later in life. If we don't continue to use our mind and use our brain and challenge it, then it doesn't grow, it doesn't thrive. And actually, as we get older, its capacity can diminish. So mental resilience. Then emotional resilience. Doing the things to keep ourselves emotionally healthy. What do we mean by resilience? Resilience is our ability to bounce back from challenging situations, from stressors, from stressful stimuli in our life, or from big catastrophes in our life. It's that ability to bounce back. And it has a lot to do with our neurobiology. We understand a lot about resilience today, and the neural pathways that give us greater resilience, that the recovery time from a stressful situation, or a really challenging situation, or even a depressive episode or something like that, a major freakout. The recovery time is shorter. The more resilient we are, the recovery time is shorter. We bounce back more quickly. And we know exactly what that looks like in our brain now, and how to cultivate greater resiliency. So emotional resiliency we create through healthy relationships and having people to share with. At some points in our life, we may need to do some counseling or some therapy. Cultivating greater emotional intelligence, honoring our own feelings and our own needs, having a kind relationship with ourselves, a deep quality of self-acceptance, and metta or maitri, or loving kindness with ourselves. All these things create greater emotional resilience. And then finally, spiritual resilience. Spirituality in clinical literature is usually defined as a quality of connectedness within ourselves, intrapersonally, with others, interpersonally, and with some greater dimension in our life, transpersonally. So how do we keep that quality of connectedness? What are the activities we do, whether it's being involved in our spiritual path, or with a community, or our meditation practice, or prayer, or being out in nature? What are the things that we do that enhance that sense of connectedness and a quality of meaning and purpose, that we have a quality of meaning and purpose in our life? And, sometimes we find ourselves in a spiritual crisis where suddenly it feels like life has lost meaning, right? So that's that quality of how we define the sense of spiritual well-being, spiritual resilience. So what are the things we do that enhance spiritual resilience in our life? So looking at how to do that, and then the more resilient we are, right, the healthier. You can also call it fitness, physical fitness, mental fitness, emotional fitness, spiritual fitness. The more fitness and resiliency we have, the more energy and availability we have for ourselves, and the more energy and availability we have for others. How many of us come home from work exhausted, and then we have very little energy to offer to the people who are most important in our lives, our spouse, our children, and so forth, right? So increasing our availability for ourselves and others as leaders with ourselves, leaders with others, requires deeper reservoirs of resilience. And that takes proactive, conscious work to create and enhance that resilience. Integrity and ethics. Probably there is no more important principle to leadership, especially leadership with others and being in any kind of leadership position, than integrity. Our insides need to match our outsides. We need to be good to our word. We need to walk our talk. We need to live our principles and live our values. And and again, this takes wakefulness and consciousness, because I'm sure all of us on here have really strong values and strong principles. But do we always act from them when push comes to shove? When our fear takes over, right? As human beings, we know when the fear goes down, which is a lot of what our contemplative practice and our mindfulness practice is doing. And over time, we know that mindfulness practice actually neurobiologically will help us through neuroplasticity, the restructuring of our brain, have a brain that is less fear-based, right? And less prone to being emotionally triggered into fear-based reactions, right? But we know when the fear goes up, our principles can be set aside. When there's no fear, human beings are naturally compassionate, kind, collaborative, partnering, right? Unless there's some serious damage there of some kind. But when the fear goes down, we get all our more pro-social desirable behaviors. When the fear goes up, we get our less desirable behaviors. So again, all these things work together, but really making strong commitment, clarifying what our principles and values are, and then making a strong commitment to really have our life be that way. One of the things I realized when I ended up in prison, obviously, some of you may or may not know my story, but I spent 14 years in prison on drug charges. I'd been involved in meditation training and Dharma for 10 years before I went. And that begs the question of how I got there. But suffice it to say, I was very hard-headed and compartmentalizing my life and not doing many of the things I'm talking about here in this presentation. But what I realized immediately when I got there, I was devastated over the fact that I was abandoning my son with no resources. He and his mother, he was 9 years old at the time. He was going to grow up without a father. At that time, I thought I was going to spend as much as 30 years in prison. And I was devastated. And I went through a real dark night of the soul, and it really woke me up. And I became radically dedicated to extricating all the negativity out of my life and trying to take all the good values I'd received from my parents and my teachers and spiritual lineage and do something positive with it. And one of the things I realized that even with all my interest in meditation over those years, I'd been mostly interested in, the awareness practices and the mind and all of that. And I hadn't focused much on the ethical part of that tradition, right? And I made the decision right there to base my life in prison on the traditional precepts from the Buddhist tradition, which is a very clear ethical guideline for how to live our lives, right? So making a commitment to that, clarifying that and committing that, and really, being good to our word, making those tough decisions when it really is pretty painful to do the right thing sometimes. And, every time we do the right thing, we increase our resiliency as well, and our confidence, our internal sense of worthiness and self-respect and so forth. Then radical responsibility. So I want to do just a little quick reflective exercise here. I'd like you to just imagine a time very quickly in your adult life, not in your childhood. And if you've experienced some serious violation in your adult life, please don't go there either. But just some time when you felt like you kind of got ripped off. You got a bum deal. You were taken advantage of. You felt like you'd been victimized. You felt completely innocent. The other person was completely wrong. You had absolute clarity about why they were wrong, and you felt like you'd really been taken advantage of in some way. Just bring that to mind. Imagine yourself, you're just downloading that to a friend or your sister or your mother, someone you would talk to on the phone or in person, and they did this and they did that. I can't believe they did this. And you're just downloading it. So what were some of the themes of that story of victimization? Was it betrayal? Was it being taken advantage of? Was it being unseen? Was it abuse of power? Was it disrespect? Was it dishonesty, deceit? Was it being invalidated? What were the themes of your story? Okay. And remembering back to when it happened, what were feelings were there? Was there shock or disbelief? Was there pain, hurt, anger, frustration, despair? Did you feel helpless or powerless? Maybe there was a sense of shame at having this happen to us. What were the feelings that were there for you? Feeling disoriented, overwhelmed, out of control? Okay, you have a sense of that, right? That landscape of themes of victimization and the feelings that arise. Okay, take a few deep breaths. Okay. And now, if you would, imagine yourself telling a different story. Same circumstances, but you're going to look into that story and but see if you can discover some way in which you can own something about that. Is there some way that I actually caused it or contributed to it? Or is there some way that I'm setting myself up to be victimized in that way or taken advantage of in that way? Maybe I just wasn't paying attention, right? Or maybe I was people pleasing. Maybe there was something in it for me. Maybe I was enabling. Right? Maybe I didn't do my due diligence, right? Maybe it's a life script and I find myself getting taken advantage of in the same way again and again, or getting in that same dysfunctional relationship again and again. Or is there some way that I allowed it to happen, really by not being wakeful, not listening to that little voice in the back of my head saying, this is not a good idea, right? Not doing my due diligence, not having a contract, right? So now retelling that story using the pronoun I, imagine yourself sharing that story from that perspective of ownership. Anything you can own in it. Just imagine yourself telling that story. Well, I did, and I could have. Yes, I did this. I was doing this. I could have, right? So there, what are the themes of ownership, of responsibility? Ownership and responsibility are themes. Or I could have seen it coming, or I did see it coming. Or a shift in perspective. Takes two to tango, seeing the other person's perspective. Or, I didn't do my due diligence, or I was lazy communication, wishful thinking. What were the themes of your story of ownership? And how does it feel different to shift into this space? Maybe it feels challenging and disorienting, but also maybe there's a sense of relief. Now that we're focused on ourselves and what we can own, maybe we feel less powerless and feel more power, a sense of empowerment. Maybe there's a sense of empathy or compassion. Maybe we feel a sense of regret or embarrassment. Okay. So that's another landscape, right? A very different landscape. So that was really quick. I do a deep process in the Radical Responsibility Seminar around this, but I wanted to give you a flavor of it. So, I think we get a sense there's two very different landscapes. They're all tied to the same set of circumstances, and there could be choice involved. So radical responsibility is choosing to embrace 100% responsibility for everything that shows up in my life. Not to blame myself. This is stepping out of the blame and shame paradigm altogether. But because it's the only place where I have any power. As long as I'm ascribing causation to things outside of myself, I'm giving my power away. That's what we mean by victim position in our work. We mean I'm feeling dissatisfied, unhappy, whatever. I'm having internal states that are just uncomfortable or I'm not happy about, and I attribute the cause to something outside myself. And we all do this all the time. So the idea of radical responsibility is to not do that, regardless of how uncomfortable the situation is, and regardless of the fact that everybody might agree that there's some causation out there. We still say, what can I do with this? Even if it's a completely unjust and horrible situation. Maybe I need to get some healing work, but what can I do to heal myself, to gradually move out of that victim place into a creative response? And of course, we're talking about us here, not others, right? We're not talking about going to others and saying, oh, you need to get off your victim thing. People do get victimized, and they may need a lot of affirmation and healing. It may happen to us. We may need a lot of affirmation and healing, but at some point, if we're going to move forward with our lives, it's about what can I do with this? And of course, we're doing this all day long with situations which aren't those really horrific and terrible kinds of victimization. Just moment to moment, we're doing this all day long. So this is the idea of radical responsibility. It's a doorway to freedom and self-empowerment. It's not a burden, it's a privilege. This is the place from which we live in the world of possibility and creativity and innovation. I make the distinction above the line and below the line. Below the line was that first scenario we did, right? The victim story. Above the line, the ownership story. Below the line is the fear-based world of problems and limitations, of drama and negativity, the drama triangle, victim, persecutor, rescuer, all of that is below the line. In Maull language, you call it the setting sun world, the world of fear-based reactivity in life. And above the line is the world of possibility. It's solution focus, it's creativity, it's innovative. It's based on this simple question, what can I do? Or what can we do? If we're not happy with the present circumstance, what can we do? Then now I'm thinking in terms of possibility, there's a million things I could do. I'm in that creative space, that innovative space. So getting out of whatever even subtle victim positions I'm in, the you, they, them, blame positions, and moving into that space of innovation and creativity through radical responsibility. And then finally, radical possibility. Radical possibility is an actual state of being, a physical state, an emotional state, a mind state, a spiritual state that is outside of our conditioning. It's non-mechanical, it's unconditioned. It's grounded in what Rinpoche called non-conceptual mind. And in that state, anything is possible. Literally, the impossible becomes possible. We're not confined by any of the shoulds or no's of our conditioning. We're not letting ourselves be squeezed into any boxes of our own making or anyone else's making. It's not about fantasy, it's not about illusion, but it's about being in that space of not knowing and bearing witness and then seeing what's possible, right? Living from that place of possibility, then all of the fear-based places we live in life, the places of limitation. Okay, well, I realized that was a bit of a sprint through the 7 keys to mindful leadership, being in that position with ourselves and others. A little later, we're going to talk about a really great opportunity to do the online Radical Responsibility course and enjoy quite a few other offerings from Shambhala Mountain Center at a really wonderful, exciting opportunity. We'll talk about that later, but right now let's take questions. So we're going to see what kind of questions you have. So I'm going to look here and see what's been posted. Don't forget to keep posting your questions, and please, if stick around, and we'll talk about the opportunity to do the Radical Responsibility course in a little bit. So the first question, I wondered if you could address leading and letting go. I struggle with leading and being attached to an outcome that I feel is important, and but being attached to an outcome, yes. Leadership, the kind of leadership, mindful leadership we're talking about, completely requires this capacity to let go of outcomes. It doesn't mean we don't have desired outcomes. It doesn't mean we don't have a vision. But if we come back to mindful presence and that idea of not knowing, bearing witness, and then trusting the actions that come out of that, now it's not necessarily just a linear one-time thing, right? We relax our need to know. We relax, there's nothing wrong with having knowledge, but we relax, the boxes and the need to know, and we relax all of our opinions and fixed ideas so that we can actually get new data, right? That we can actually be present to what really is. And then the connection between what is and our own innate wisdom leads to spontaneous actions that are actually in alignment with what is. They're naturally wisdom-based actions. And so if doing that practice, we may respond in a wonderful way to a situation that's very creative and very wise and has a wonderful outcome. But 10 seconds later, 10 minutes later, an hour, a day later, if we're stuck on that action or that outcome, it may not work at all. So we continually need to come back to not knowing, always coming back to not knowing and bearing witness. I lead a training called The Event. It's a very, very intense group process. And the only way I can lead that training, because I'm really responsible for a very intense process with a large group of people, is to be in that space of not knowing, because that's the only place I have access to the kind of intuitive instincts that and it's not really just, it's the instincts, but it's getting the data to feel and see what's really going on so I can respond creatively. The only way I can really be effective is to be in that space of not knowing. Right? So it's a great question, and yes, absolutely, it's difficult to do because we have our desired outcomes. But again, our mindfulness practice is really training ourselves to be in that place of in a sense, non-outcome, right? Non-agenda. One of my colleagues Roshi Joan Halifax calls having expectations planned resentments, right? I love that. Expectations are planned resentments. So, holding our outcomes lightly and trusting that the universe, there may be something else going on that we need to tune into. Yeah. Okay, the second question from Maureen: how can we reconcile our own desire to be mindful leaders if we must work with or for someone who is what we might call unmindful, abrupt, angry, disconnected? Are there good ways to work with those people while still being authentic to ourselves? Are there ways I might influence our work so that our clients have a positive experience and are protected from this type of person? I'm a medical professional. Well, another great question, Maureen. So as I mentioned before, I spent 14 years in prison. And this is where I learned this is where all this work came from, was my time in prison. Basically, I had 10 years of powerful Dharma training with Trungpa Rinpoche before I went to prison. But I had this crazy secret life and ended up there. And I was in a maximum security federal prison hospital. And a maximum security prison is what's called, sociologists call a total institution. It's a totalitarian environment. Resistance is futile, right? They have all the power, and the immediate answer to anything is no. Well, can we try it? No. Well, what? It's been done before. Somebody messed it up. No. And how do you get something done? I embraced my life there and wanted that to be my community and to try to add value to that community. And I was actually able to start many programs, including the first hospice program in a prison anywhere, along with others, and started 2 national organizations while I was in there. Well, how did I manage to do that in that kind of environment, which was a tyrannical environment, where not all the staff were, horrible and brutal. Some of them were quite, they're all human, and many of them were fine and well-intended, but a lot of them were angry, and a lot of them were kind of brutal. But at any rate, they had all the power. And if you push that authority button, that's what you were going to get. So, you have to learn how to work with people, because every human being has innate basic goodness, has a tender heart, and we all have all kinds of buttons, and we have our authority button and our fear button, this button. We all have that human being button somewhere. And how can we approach a person to get that best result with them? How can we let go of our sort of enemy images that we've developed about that person? Relax that knowing, right? I know this person's a tyrant. I know this person's unkind. I know this person's this. I know this person. Relax that knowing and just bear witness. And within that space of loving kindness for ourselves, we begin to have an intuitive sense of this other person and what they're needing and what they're feeling, and how can we approach them in a way that is lowering their fear, that's not adding to their fear or defensiveness. And we often find that we're getting different results. Sometimes we have to have good boundaries. Sometimes we simply have to say no. We have to make a boundary. And doing that with people that have more power than us in an organization can be challenging and a bit scary. And we should approach that very carefully. We don't want to recklessly lose our job or something. But sometimes we do have to make a boundary. But we can also make boundaries through presence. When we have that quality of mindful presence and we're doing this kind of work I'm talking about, people tend to look for somebody else to take out their aggression on if they're that person that's manifesting their suffering in that way within an organization. But, I'll tell you something very quickly here. I grew up in Missouri, the show me state, and naturally kind of cynical and, a good rational sort of skeptical education, scientific education. And so, I believe it when I see it. That's my kind of default mode. So even though I have a profound love of the idea of basic goodness or Buddha nature or our innate goodness or sacredness or divinity, and I was kind of, well, maybe it's not ultimately true for everyone. And in prison, there were a lot of people among my fellow prisoners and among the guards who were pretty good candidates for someone who maybe not everybody has this basic goodness thing. And it probably wasn't a good thing to be doing, but I kind of tracked people over a long period of time. And every time I thought this was a male prison and mostly male staff, every time I thought I had my man or that person that maybe had no redeeming values, they inevitably, some of the most brutal guards, inevitably revealed their heart and their tenderness in some way. It happened every time among prisoners and guards who most people would think were just despicable human beings. Every time, it never failed. And I developed a profound experiential trust in the innate goodness of human beings and in our ability to call that forth from others. And not in a naive sense. There are some challenging situations, and we have to have good boundaries. Sometimes we have to take care of ourselves. But at the same time, things are much more possible than we often think if we don't solidify the situation too much. Christine, my question, how can one develop support and stay true to a quieter leadership style when the dominant model of leadership is extroverted, charismatic, fast talk, thinking this should, left brain. I guess you're talking about more left brain and leadership styles. Well, I think we, in some ways, we don't have any choice, right? If we have any chance of being in a leadership position with ourselves and then showing up in a mindful leadership role with others, the only way is to be true to ourselves, right? And but what do we mean by being true to ourselves? We don't necessarily mean being true to our mechanical nature, right? So we may discover new possibilities in ourselves. We may discover possibilities where we have capacities. So for a variety of leadership styles, what's sometimes called situational leadership, where sometimes that more quiet quality of leadership is called for. And sometimes we might be able to step into a more proactive, more charismatic leadership style that seems kind of foreign to us, but maybe we do develop a little more access. We broaden our palette of leadership through working through these steps to mindful leadership. But nonetheless, being true to ourselves and trusting our own innate wisdom and our own intuitive ability to bring value to situations. But it really begins with ourselves. We often think, well, how am I going to do that in this situation? How am I going to do that at work? How am I going to do that here? How am I going to get in a leadership role with my kids? Obviously, learning strategies and skills and focusing on those things is very important, but it has to start here. It has to start in being in a leadership role with ourselves, because if not, then our conditioning, our mechanicalness, our reactivity is running the show most of the time. And I'm going to share something with you that I don't mean for this to be insulting, but most of us feel we're walking around as adults, making conscious decisions most of the time. It's not true. We lead very mechanical lives, and our conditioning is running the show most of the time. And when we really start to practice, and I know we're all practicing, but I mean, bring our practice off the cushion into everyday awareness of our life and our self-talk and our interactions, and really looking deeply at our habitual patterns, we'll see that there's a lot of early conditioning that's still running our life. And it's the work, it's the challenge of the human existence to be able to step out of this, to wake up out of that conditioning. And it's no small thing. So it really begins with getting in this leadership role with ourselves, any capacity that we're going to have to do that with others. But again, great question. Thank you, Christine. From DC, sometimes I feel that my tender heart experience is overwhelming and I cry for long periods of time. Am I going too far with feeling the tender heart experience? Should I continue to go ahead? Well, I wouldn't. I'm certainly not you are the person. You are the only person that knows the answer to that. The only thing I would say is that my teacher, Rinpoche, talked a lot about holding our seat. So if, when we connect with that sadness, if tears are coming up, can we hold our seat with that, or are we getting lost in it? So there's a line somewhere between not suppressing and, being with, but not indulging. So, the practice with any emotions is not to suppress them, but also not to indulge them, but really to be able to hold our seat and be with that rawness. And that may involve tears. You're the only one who knows. And this is really our practice in our lives is learning to hold our seat and not using that as some way to suppress ourselves, but also not allowing our sort of emotional responses to carry us away so that we're no longer really available for ourselves and others, right? Again, being in that leadership role with ourselves and then being available to others requires us to hold our seat. And can we hold our seat and still be available for ourselves and to others, even when we're experiencing deep sadness? You know, I lost my beloved partner, who was really my soulmate, a profound practitioner and teacher who I met, connected with several years after coming out of prison. And we both finally had the relationship of our lives. And I lost her to cancer 6 years ago. And I was in a profound state of grief for quite a long time, for years. And yet I had to continue living my life and working and training and teaching. And my practice was really to be able to hold my seat and continue working, to be in the midst of leading a training and not shutting that down. You know, the tendency is I'm going to shut that down, put it over here so I can go lead this training. No, I tried to have it, you know, allow it to be right there with me and lead the training from that place. But if I were to let it overcome me, I couldn't lead the training, right? I would lose my seat and not be able to lead a training. But if I was shutting it down and shutting it off, I could still lead a training, but I would be missing something. I wouldn't be there as authentically as I could be as a leader and as a trainer, and I would be offering a lot less to the people that I was interacting with there. Okay, how are we doing on time? Well, we'll just take one more question, I think, from Charlie. What do you think the best way is to instill a sense of purpose and inspiration in an organization? You know, organizations like people have their heart, right? Every organization, it's a living organism. It has its heart, it has its history, it has its life cycle, and it's really a living organism. And I've been doing organizational development work and consulting work for the last 15, 16 years now. And I often talk about, and in training other consultants, when you come into an organization, you have to find its heart. And you have to make a relationship with the heart of that organization if you're going to really be able to do any good work there. And that heart may be centered in a few people in that organization, or it may be in the collective spirit of the organization. But that heart is there, and that heart is also where that sense of purpose is found within that inspiration. So helping organizations, because every organization began with some profound inspiration, some profound vision, whether it's a nonprofit or for-profit organization, it's an institution, a government agency, or government altogether, United States, a country, any country, a system, a religion, all these things began with some profound vision, a profound sense of possibility. And there was a proclamation, a statement of possibility that launched some new possibility into the world. And how to help organizations and institutions that have lost touch with that come back to that heart, that original inspiration, that original declaration of possibility. For me, that's the work of helping an organization connect with its purpose and inspiration. Okay, well, let's talk now a little bit about radical responsibility. So this is a seminar that I'm really excited to offer this opportunity and to really engage with I hope, a very large group of people online. I'm going to be available over the 8 or 9 weeks that we'll be together in a community going through this course together. But we're going to keep the course open throughout the whole summer. So anybody who doesn't have time to complete it as we're going through the 8 weeks, or you're going on vacation, don't worry about that. It'll be available to you. You'll have at least the whole summer to complete it. And if you need more time, we'll give you more time. But for those who can go through it together, we'll be engaging online. And we'll be going through these 8 modules of the training together, each of which has many units. And these are based on a live training that I delivered in Baltimore last year. And so there are quite a number of videos, 3, 4, 5 videos in each module. And you watch the videos, and then you answer questions and quizzes, and you're engaging in threaded discussions online with your fellow participants, and I'm responding to you as well. And what do we cover? Well, it's similar to this mindful leadership scenario. We do a lot of training around presence, learning to be more deeply and fully present with ourselves, and more deeply and fully present with others, and getting access to new kinds of awareness, new kinds of perception. So we're getting more data with ourselves and with others. We're getting more accurate data. So we naturally become more intelligent, more skillful in our interactions with ourselves and with others, all grounded in a context of loving kindness, basic friendliness for ourselves and with others, a non-judgmental, inclusive, unbiased, very appreciative awareness of our own experience and that of others. We train in deep listening. A lot of it's based on dyadic work, which you'll be able to do in an internal way in the course, or I encourage you on the course to find people to practice with as you're going through the course. We'll do the emotional intelligence training in much greater depth. We went through it all very quickly tonight, but we'll have the opportunity to go into every one of those things in great depth. We'll go into the radical responsibility model in great depth. We'll talk about the drama triangle, Cartman's drama triangle, and how we get caught up in this cycle of negative drama that then spins off all kinds of other dramas. We get hooked in that victim mindset, or we get hooked into a controlling persecutor mindset, or we get hooked in that rescuer position, and not a authentic helping position, but we get caught in that rescuer mode, and we're caught up in that drama triangle that spins. It becomes a vortex of negative toxicity, and we all know what we're talking about, the kind of drama that we experience, the negative drama we experience in our sometimes our families and the organizations we're part of, and in the world around us. I mean, just turn on the 6 o'clock news. The world is full of it. And once you really grok that drama triangle, you start seeing it everywhere. And then we experientially learn how to get ourselves off the drama triangle. When we've swallowed the hook, as Pema Chodron encourage us, don't bite the hook, what she calls shumpa, Tibetan word for hook. And so we learn how not to bite the hook, but we also learn when we have found ourselves with the hook in our mouth, how do we get the hook out of our mouth? How do we get off the drama triangle? And how do we avoid it? How do we just reduce the level of drama in our lives, in our families, in our relationships, in our organization, the world around us? Negative drama. There's healthy human drama, of course, a wonderful thing, but I'm talking about negative drama. Then we experientially really go through and learn the radical responsibility model and get this above the line, below the line distinction with absolute clarity. And I don't want to give too much away there, because we really, there's a kind of illumination that happens in the way that we experientially learn that in the training. We learn an empowerment model above the line that I call the empowerment triangle, where we learn how to shift from being in that victim mindset to being in that co-creative. What else can I do? What can we do? What can I do? Position, that solution, possibility, innovative, creative focus in life. We learn how to move from being prosecutors to good challengers, from being rescuers to being, coaches and allies that really support people, and support people from here, not from needing to be up here, right? That where we're getting our ego needs met by being in that fixer, savior, or rescuer position. But we learn to support people from here. So that's that whole radical responsibility model, where we learn how to unhook from the drama. We get that above the line, below the line distinction, and then we learn to work above the line and develop these empowering skills of how to live in an empowering relationship with ourselves and others that's grounded in self-kindness, kindness for others. Then we also go into really how to take these skills further into the world. Very specific skill sets on how to live from above the line and lead from above the line and interact with others from above the line. So this, you can see you're gonna as soon as we're finished here, you're gonna see right here. In fact, right now there's a link below. I'm sorry, I should have told you that. There's a link right below the video window here, where you can click on that and find all about the course. And you'll see on the page the whole thing is laid out there with all the modules and all the units, so you can see everything that's involved there. And you can also see this wonderful offering that we're making in partnership with Maull Mountain Center. So normally this course costs $397, and we're going to offer it for $197. And with that, you get the resource package of the Beyond Mindfulness Conference. If you haven't purchased that already, you're also going to get a 1-year online community where you'll have access to my premium audio archive, but it has 44 different audio tapes from teachings I've given on all these kind of topics and similar topics. I think there's something like 30 or 31 videos in my premium archive that, again, are video teachings on similar topics. And you'll get access to this online community, the Windhorse Seminars online community, where you can interact with others who are interested in this kind of work. And you'll get a free coaching video that I put out every month. So you'll get a free coaching video from me so you get a free membership in this for 1 year, which normally I think it's $174 value. I think it's $14.50 a month or something for the basic membership. I have different levels of membership, but that's the basic level. So it's $174 value. And so, you're getting the resource package, which is now selling for $147. You're getting the seminar, which is $397, and you're getting a year's membership in the Windhorse Seminars community and access to the premium archive and the coaching video. And so I don't know what it all sums up to, but it's close to $600, and we're offering it now in partnership with Maull Mountain Center for $197. And this is a way for you to support Maull Mountain Center. If you're thrilled with the work that Maull Mountain Center is doing, offering the Awaken the World Conference last fall, offering this Beyond Mindfulness Conference, both of these free to the public. And as you know, it takes a lot of work to put these things on. And so one of the ways that we can continue to support this work is by purchasing this package. I would encourage, even if you're not interested in this course, please go buy the Beyond Mindfulness resource package. It's an incredible value and an incredible resource with over 30 teachers, amazing teachers, presenting teachings on mindfulness. But if you are interested in exploring this work more deeply, I would really encourage you to jump in and let's do this radical responsibility journey together. So I'm really excited to meet many of you online, and we're going to get to know each other quite personally, and we're going to take this journey together. And again, I made a promise at the beginning of this presentation that if you would give your full attention to this, that this was actually going to change your life in a significant way. And there are some ideas that I've given you here, and I don't want to give away the kind of whole thing here, but we will work towards some realizations in the radical responsibility training where we will really get in our bones the distinction between living our lives from that where life is kind of happening to us and realizing it or not, we're kind of in a victim mindset relationship to life, and we're in a mechanical, adaptive, coping, reactive relationship to life. And to be able to shift from that and actually live our lives from choice and live our lives from that state of possibility. It is huge. It takes work. But when you clearly get that distinction, life is never the same. It's not a magic wand, but life is never the same. And it becomes impossible to go backwards. It's like, the party of living our unconscious life where we kind of feel like we're awake, but, really, if we really look more deeply, our mechanical nature is running the show most of the time. That party kind of got spoiled, and it becomes very difficult to go backwards. So, and you wouldn't want to anyway. So, I hope you've gotten some good ideas from this webinar tonight. And I guarantee you, if you can go back and watch this again. If you take any one of these 7 principles and really look at it deeply and begin to act on it and bring it into your practice, what I find in my own life as a Dharma practitioner, mindfulness practitioner, what happened for so many years was I was compartmentalizing, which we all do. I was mindful on the cushion. I went to retreats. I was very sincerely involved in the practice, in the spiritual life. And yet it wasn't penetrating the rest of my life because I wasn't allowing it to, and I didn't create the intentionality. Most of us, I think, have this idea, I'm going to practice however much I practice every day. I practice 10 minutes a day or I practice an hour a day sometimes. So I go on retreats, and I hope it's going to bleed over into my life. I hope it's going to change my life. And it will. It does. But not nearly to the extent it can if we very proactively think, how can I actually let this practice and these qualities of mindful presence really penetrate into my daily life? Look at the structure of my daily life, the ceremony of my life. Look at my relationships. Look how to really put myself in that position where I'm in the leadership role of myself, where I'm not indulging or allowing myself to be caught in that victim mindset where life is happening at me, but really putting myself in the leadership role of my life proactively. It can exponentially accelerate the benefits of our mindfulness practice. So again, I really look forward to being with you all in the course, and thank you very much for your time this evening. If some of you are just going to watch this later, so Again, I think it's going to be available for a number of days. So if you're watching it later, again, I didn't get to respond to your questions, but if you join the course, we can actually interact together, and I can respond to your questions directly. So I wish you all a really good evening and a great life. Live your lives with possibility and compassion and passion. And right down here, you can click on that link and find out all about this really wonderful offer and opportunity, I think, to do the radical responsibility work, and while doing it, support Shambhala Mountain Center.
Thank you so much, Acharya Fleet Maull. This is Kaylee Isaacs from Shambhala Mountain Center. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation and offering your wisdom to us. And I just wanted to make a quick correction to the audience so that they're aware. The price for the package that we're offering for the next 3 days is actually $297, not $197, just so folks know.
I'm sorry, right? I'm giving away the whole thing here. Yeah, but yes, $297, but that includes the resource package, which is $147 value. So sorry about that. And again, wishing you all the best.
Thank you.